So hello guys and welcome back. We are going to check on probably and still an existing archetype in standard, but this time I think it's probably potential for the metagame, and if ever that the banning tonight will not happen or will not make any changes in the standard format. But now let's see that if still this deck would still be out of potential, or probably are still already having some good results given in several recent Magic the Gathering online tournaments at the record of 5 wins and no losses. So this deck is the Azorius Control. I've named this one Finn because of the inclusion of the Final Fantasy set, and one in particular that has made a debut in the build is this card, the Ultima. Ultima is a 5 mana sorcery that's 2 white and 3 of any color or colorless that can destroy all artifacts and creatures and then end the turn. So that's basically having this effect. If you can check what it does with ending the turn, exile all spells and abilities from the stack, including this card, and then the player whose turn it is discards down to their maximum hand size, damage wears off, and this turn and until end of turn effects end. But in any case, there are effects of this, particularly having this benefit to various archetype matchups in the format. More so, it can also destroy artifacts, particularly Cory Steel Cutter, which is now the menace of the Izzet Prowess deck in the metagame. So let's now take a rundown of the cards by type. We have 7 creatures, 2 enchantments, 16 instants, 26 lands, a lone planeswalker in the Elspeth, Stormslayer, and 8 sorcery. So let's check on the creatures. This would be now the look of the creature lineup of this deck in the currently and the upcoming months, of course. We have copies of Besa, the Bounding Spring, which hold off the aggro matchup, especially mono red, wherein you can add in your board creatures with a fish token, or you can add a treasure token if you have more lands. If you are lesser in life, of course, you will gain 4 life. And then if you have lesser cards in that, you will draw a card. So it's very relevant. It has a 4/5 body for 4. There absolutely no drawback per se. It's just a situational attack, but still very efficient in the metagame. And along with it is your utility card / late game threat in the form of Marang River Regent. Because the utility of Coil and Catch, you can draw 3 cards and then discard a card and then omen this one back to your library. And then later on, if you need to hardcast this for 6 mana, you get a 6/7 flyer that enters, can return 2 other non-permanents to their owner's hands. Either you return your other temporary lockdown, or bounce off your Bisa again for another effect, or bounce off your opponent's threats and anything relevant on their board, so that later on you can also counter them again if ever they would cast it. So this is your core creatures and basically also one of your main win conditions in this deck. And of course, the enchantment that's probably a good sweep for this metagame is, of course, Temporary Lockdown. Well, me being an aggro player, I personally hate this card, but this is a call for now that they need to stop the development of this Cory Steel Cutter decks. But of course, they still need to also pass through the Spell Pierce mana. And for the lineup of this instance, of course, several are counter spells in the form of Lower Lies, also 3 steps ahead. Let's check on the grid. So these cards basically negate Number Lies and 3 steps ahead by your main spot removals, or in the form of spot counter spells, countering counters your opponents, also preventing them from recurring later on because of the exile effect, and hard counter against non-creature spells, particularly the Steel Cutter. But for the aggro matchups, we have the main deck Elspeth Smite to deal off with the early attackers, and they would be exiled, and also Rider's End, which also does an exile effect by exiling the creature or vehicle, and cost 2 less if it's targeting a top 1. And of course, Get Lost, a lone spot removal, but very efficient against planeswalkers and enchantments at the cost of having them 2 map tokens, which I think that's relevant if you're playing with this card, wherein you just get them generate the map token. If they don't use it, you use lockdown to wipe them out along with this, other creatures. And some card draw effect. Of course, 3 steps ahead can also act on card draw. By having this effect, you draw 2 cards and then discard a card. And also deduce just a lone copy, but I think this also goes with the curve of having another way access to draw a card and use the clue token also to draw you another card. Now for the lineup, before we go with the lands and of course our other sorcery card aside from the Sweep of Ultima is your 4 copies to stack up, which means this card would go into having to replace 2 cards, and looking at the top 5 cards, very essential and useful because you need to access some of your best card to answer the current situation of the board, or also getting to dig through your sideboards in case of sideboarded matches. And costing also of 3 mana is very good also for this kind of deck build. And last but not the least, before we go for the lands, are Elspeth. Elspeth is basically having you to create tokens. You create twice that many tokens. At the same time, you can create an army of 1/1 White Soldier token, which can those tokens be pumped by the 0 loyalty effect, putting +1 counter on each creatures, and then those gains flying. And if needed, you can -3 this as their ability to destroy a target creature with mana value to your creator. But most of all, just coming up the board with this 1/1 White Soldier creature token, and also flying in for the win with a +0 effect. Now for the lands, we know that mana fix is already established in this kind of build. We have Archive as our main dual land in this deck to surveil for answers, and the help of Verge to make sure that this would produce these 2 colors if you control a place or an island. And added also Seacrom Coast for the early mana access that you don't need to comes into play tap. And having 4 copies in the deck with a lone copy of Electra Waste. That's another added fix, but of course basic lands are still your main fix here to help satisfy the Verge, and also an added non-damaging man fix. And also Manland was needed with 2 copies of Restless Anchorage in this build. And in the late game would happen, Fountain Port is your source to draw cards, create an army of blue fish creature token, which you can also sacrifice to draw a card. And if needed to answer opposing lands, you have Demolition Field as your way to deal with them, which also gets you to search or basic land, which you just replace this one with your own basic land, of course, to filter out your deck. And let's check on the stats. Additionally, it's more white with 31, blue is 25, but the production is pretty much even. You can see with those good mana fix here, we don't really need a bad effect to fix your blue or white mana. And surprisingly, average mana value is 3.24, but of course, if you need to curve out with your counter spells in your card effects, you need also to not miss your land drops, because that's essentially what control deck does, which you need to also take in mind or take note of. And lastly, our tokens. We have 6 tokens for this deck. Clue token, Copy token from Jesus Ahead, Fish token from the Fountain Port and Bessa also. Map token from Get Lost, Soldier token from Elspeth, and Treasure token also produced by the Mounting Spring. And that's pretty much it for this kind of deck build. If you are the standard grinder and MTGO Online, I'm sure you're already familiar with this kind of build, but we are looking to the potential of along maybe after a few months that more of the sets would go this before the rotation. We see that this deck would be one of the probably topmost control archetype in the standard format, which of course we'll see more of this in action, maybe in a future spotlight or grand event in one of the cities, which we see how this deck would perform as being a control archetype setup for the standard format. So I guess it's been it, guys. Thank you for watching this one. Let's highlight the deck discussion for Azorius control in the Final Fantasy MTG standard format. And for future updates, we have more of card reviews, it probably will have deck text once more of the Edge of Eternity cards will appear with spoilers, and I'll try to dissect more of these cards to be of that potential for standard and maybe even for Pioneer Modern. And guys, thank you for watching. This is again another tech video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and see you guys on the next one.